While jazz was developing a kind of a parallel form of music that was developing called the blues. Now the blues was, in its strictest form, was very simple. It was just 12 bars of music, and it had only 3 chords. And it was, in its strictest form, it was that way every single time. So, well, with jazz, if you wanted to play a jazz tune with another group, like Red River Valley, something like that, everybody would have to know Red River Valley, and then you could play it. With the blues, everybody just has to know the blues, and it's much easier. Everybody does know the blues. Every great jazz musician has at least one or several blues pieces in their repertoire. I can't think of a single jazz musician that doesn't. And so blues was, whereas you heard these stellar trained musicians playing jazz, blues could be played by pretty much anyone. And consequently, you had some, blues was kind of the earliest form of protest music almost, because just about anybody could write a blues, write lyrics to the blues, sing about what was on their mind. And here's one of the great blues composers of all time, ladies and gentlemen. Perfect timing. Thank you for coming in.
Well, the word blues sounds nice.
So some of the songwriters started capitalizing on this and writing formal blues pieces out that they'd sell as sheet music, and bands started recording different blues and making that popular. The first really popular blues composer was W.C. Handy, and he wrote all kinds of things. He wrote St. Louis Blues was probably his most popular one. He wrote Yellow Dog Blues, and I'd like to feature Sue here on a tune called Memphis Blues. One of the things about the blues is it didn't always have to stick to that straight 12-bar format. A lot of blues writers went outside that. And in fact, blues was so popular that some pieces that had nothing to do with the 12-bar format got labeled blues just because that was a buzzword back then, before they had the word buzzword. But W.C. Handy would do that. For example, with St. Louis Blues, there's a part that goes. That's not the blues. But he incorporated that in a song that had blues in it. And this is another one. It's one of my favorites, and I like to hear Sue do this. This is called the Memphis Blues.
Down to Memphis town, that's where the people smile at you all the while. Hospitality, they were good to me. I couldn't spend a dime and had the grandest time. I went out a-dancing with a Tennessee deer. They had a fella there named Handy with a band you should hear. And while the people swayed, all those band boys played real harmony. I never will forget the tune that Handy called the Memphis Blues. Memphis Blues. Ah, they had a fiddler there that always slickened his hair, and boys, he sure could pull some bow. And when the big bassoon second to the trombone screw, well, he made a moan just like a sinner on revival day. Oh, that melancholy strain, that ever-haunting refrain, it's like a moaning sorrow song. Here comes the very part, wrapped its spell around my heart. It made me wild to hear that ever-loving blues again, Memphis Blues. it winds high up in the summer pines. Hear me people, hear me people, hear me I pray. I'm gonna take 1,000,000 lessons till I learn how to play. Because I hear it yet, simply can't forget that blues refrain. There's nothing like a handy band that played the Memphis blues so grand. All those blues, yes, they had a fiddler there that always slickened his hair, and boys, he sure could pull some bones. And when the big bassoon, second to the trombone, screwed, yes, he made 'em moan just like a sinner on revival day. Oh, that melancholy strain, that ever-haunting refrain, it's like a moaning sorrow song. Here comes the very part, wrapped its spell around my heart. Well, it made me wild to hear that ever-loving blues again. Memphis blues.
Okay. So, Big Mama Sue, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be appearing together at the Dixieland Jazz Bash by the Day this weekend, so come on and see us. So, as I said, the blues was accessible by pretty much anyone that had even a little bit of musical ability. But even the people that had a lot of musical ability back then didn't have the means to buy musical instruments, saxophones, trumpets, and all that. It cost money. And so what happened was around that time, people started using just about anything to play jazz music. Some instruments that you would see in a jazz band that were common back then, you would laugh at if you saw in a rock band today, like a 6-foot saxophone or a washboard or something like that, you know. But everybody had a washboard because they didn't have washing machines back then. And no Maytags or Whirlpools or anything like that. So people started picking up spoons from the kitchen and just making music any way they could. And some of the musical instruments back then were dictated not by economy, but by recording techniques. If a band wanted to go make a recording or play live on a bandstand, if they had to, nowadays we think of a jazz band, we think of a guy playing a string bass. Well, back then that wouldn't have really cut it. You went into a recording studio, you might have one mic in the middle of the floor that was going to pick up everybody. String bass would have never picked up. You couldn't really hear it outdoors if it didn't have an amplifier on it. So they used a big bass saxophone in place of that. And similarly, with a band, you might not have had, whereas normally a guitar would have had a nice soft strumming sound, you couldn't use it. You had to use something that could cut through and the people could hear, and the banjo fit that perfectly. I wonder if, Sue, you could demonstrate a couple of ways that people could have taken their washboard and used it in lieu of an expensive drum set.
Well, I maintain that a washboard can take an entire drum set and replicate it. It takes the place of the drums in the band. It's a percussion instrument. The reason is that almost all rhythm, whether it be drums, washboard, whoever's playing the xylophone, all it really comes down to is thumps and scrapes. Thumps, scrapes. For example, I can do a marching drum cadence for you on the washboard. Marching cadence. If I wanted to do Latin, I would do So you can do that. I think you'll find that in jazz, that's one of the elements that goes along with improvisation. You make do with what you have, and it takes a little imagination, but you can get there. So this is the poor man's drum set, the washboard.
Do you use thimbles ever?
Thimbles are the traditional way. Actually, I think when they started using washboard, people used spoons or thimbles. I've seen people use church keys. I've seen people use actual drum brushes and drumsticks. I wanted my own style. So I wanted something that would make that snare drum sound that makes. So I looked long and hard. What this is an antique gravy whip. They stopped making these in about 1945, so I have to buy them in antique stores. But it's worth it because I get that unique snare drum kind of sound. I just use this for the 1 and 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3. This is 1 and 3. So this is just an egg beater. But this is my own style. I'm flattered. They say that the plagiarism is the greatest form of compliment, and I've seen a whole bunch of washboard players now using these. I started doing it for the sound, and also because thimbles are very hard. As you get older and you get arthritis in your hands, oh my gosh, that's really uncomfortable. This is just, it's wrist. It's all wrist, just like playing the drums.
So you can see in the hands of a master that does not sound like someone washing their clothes. And similarly, a banjo in the hands of a master doesn't have to sound like and Eddie is the finest banjo player in the world as far as I'm concerned. I wonder if you could just demonstrate some of the different sounds and timbres that a banjo can make.
Well, in the 20s, when they had the 20s, the Paul Whiteman band, they in the little ensembles, they would use tenor banjo. Tenor banjo is a shorter neck, and it's tuned in fifths. It's tuned much higher than this. The open string. That's my open string. On a tenor, it would be. And when you play a tenor, it really cuts through. So it took the place of like an amplified guitar or something like that, which came much later. So tenor banjo was used. This is a plectrum. They call it a plectrum banjo, which means pick. So there are different styles, different rhythms. I use a flat pick, and I think most people back in Dixieland or the jazz used flat picks. They didn't use the finger picks like the bluegrass players. Mostly it was a flat pick, and there are different edges, different sides to the pick. There's a sharp point. And I've developed the rounded. I use the rounded part of the pick because it gives it a more mellow sound. If you can have, if you can have a mellow sound on the banjo, is that possible?
Yes.
In your hands.
So that's a sound with the rounded edge, and here's the sound with the pointed end. So there's a lot of difference there, and I like that. It's more me. But. My job is to play basically 2/4, which is the 2/4 of the beat on a 4/4 tune. It's like 1, 2, 1. And give the wisp of a sound of on 1 and 3. And I'm to keep time, and that is everything in music. Time is everything. Without time, thank God we have great time together. This is, but if time is off, the whole band is thrown off, just like a flat tire. It'll just go off the road and explode. It's just a horrible thing. So no matter what your technique is on the instrument, time is the most important thing. And so I rest my case.
We're going to do one more tune and then take a break. I wanted to give one more example of instruments that you wouldn't normally think would be played with a jazz band, but are. And my tie into that is that around this time, jazz started spreading not just through records, but through vaudeville. Vaudeville were traveling shows that went from town to town, and a lot of the musicians in the bands were interested in jazz and played jazz, but tried to incorporate that into the vaudeville shows without making it too stuffy. Because vaudeville shows were entertainment, people wanted to be entertained. So jazz started creeping in more, and you started getting maybe a little more wacky version, a little more novelty version of jazz. And an instrument that exemplifies that, in my opinion, is the kazoo. And Sue, I wondered if you could do a kazoo chorus on a tune that was, this tune is straight from vaudeville. It shows you, but it shows you how the combination of vaudeville can be infused with jazz and can also have a wonderful novelty element to it. It's called Where Did Robinson Crusoe Go? With Friday on Saturday night. Is that okay?
That's me again. Okay,
That'd be
that's
like
okay.
it wasn't okay.
Nope. I have a little anecdote I like to tell about this tune. This is a piece that I learned because I found the sheet music in my grandmother's piano bench when I inherited her sheet music collection. And it was the most dog-eared, tattered piece of sheet music she owned. So I realized it was one of her favorite tunes. She actually requested that this be sung at her memorial service, and I did. Granny was quite a gal. So Robinson Crusoe.
In F, right?
I think it's in C, isn't it?
Yeah.
C?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
C?
Yeah. C. Thousands of years ago, or maybe more, out on an island on a lonely shore, Robinson Crusoe landed one fine day. No rent to pay and no wife to obey. His good man Friday was his only friend. They didn't borrow or lend. They built a little hut, lived there till Friday, but Saturday night it was shut. And where did Robinson Crusoe go with Friday on Saturday night? Every Saturday night they would start into Rome. Sunday morning they'd come staggering home on this island of wild men and cannibal trimming. And where there are wild men, there must be wild women. So where did Robinson Crusoe go with Friday on Saturday night? Robinson Crusoe was a good old scout. Robinson Crusoe knew his way about. He'd go out hunting chickens now and then, but he knew when he was chasing a hen. Once he told Friday, "You must stay at home. I got to go out alone." Friday felt very blue. He said, "It's wrong of you. Couldn't you make it for two?" And where did Robinson Crusoe go with Friday on Saturday night? Every Saturday night they would start into Rome. Sunday morning they'd come staggering home on this island of wild men and cannibal trimming. And where there are wild men, there must be wild women. So where did Robinson Crusoe go with Friday on Saturday, Friday on Saturday, Friday on Saturday night?
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Big Mama Sue. Fast Eddie. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back and finish up here.